Betty, your family came from Canton in the Pearl River area of China. Your grandfather came to the United States, came to Seattle to start a laundry here. But then your father went back to Canton, which is where your brother Wing Luke was born.
He was born in China in 1925.
But you were born here, and
Yep.
your four other siblings, were they all born here, or yes?
Yes, in Seattle.
In Seattle, So he was actually the only China-born member of your generation of the family.
Yes, that's correct.
And what was it like growing up in your family with your older? He was 17 years older then.
Right. It's very unusual in that within our single nuclear family, there was a great age range among the members of the family. My father was 57 when I was born. He was 20 years older than my mother. And then when Wing was born, and then he was 17 when I was born. And so it's almost like having four different generations of ages within a single family. And so what I saw in growing up is listening and learning and hearing information from all that range of different generations, and just absorbing and learning and listening. And so I consider it a very unusual and very fortunate position.
And we're in a room in the Wing Luke Museum, which has, I'm told, maybe some family objects, some objects from the laundry. Or, did all the family work in the business together? Did you ever work with your father, or did Wing Luke work with your father?
Oh, absolutely. It was a family business. You had to work. You had to help run the business. If you hired outside, then you'd have to share the profits. And so we as a family, we pitched in ways that we could at our age.
And at what point did the family know, did you know that he was going to go into politics?
I would say that just gradually he kept doing leadership things. He just kept doing more and more, and just really being successful at it.
Right.
What I admire is that he was always thinking beyond what standard running for office would be.
So the civil rights, I think, was a huge thing for him, and particularly housing seemed to be something that he was really interested in, and obviously the restrictions. There's a beginning of the fight to end the restrictions, racial restrictions, ethnic and religious restrictions on where people could live.
Yes.
And he was a leader.
Yeah, he was on the committee of JACL for looking at Indian land laws at the time that we lost him. But his interest, it certainly was across the board in terms of equity and fairness. And as far as the civil rights goes, since he was in office, he could not be in a position of demonstrating or sitting in on those demonstrations. But what he did was he found ways in which people could get their views heard. Wing was at a time I so admired, because there used to be an ecumenical council. They would have weekly television broadcasts, and the ecumenical council talked about standing up for people, talked about different ways in which they could help bring about fairness and fair housing.
His slogan when he ran for the city council and won, became the first Asian American city councilor in Seattle, was you are not electing a platform, but a councilman. And what exactly did that mean?
He spoke about you don't elect the issue, you elect the man.
Right.
And you elect a person, what they stood for, things that they valued, things they promoted, the things that they cared about, the ways in which they cared about the community. And let me tell you, one of my favorite stories about his leadership presence. The first week that he was on the city council, they told him there's going to be a live television broadcast on open housing. I remember watching it on television, and it was held where people, all sides could speak. But my favorite part of the story is afterwards, he says these two white men came up to him after it was over, and they said, "You know we are against open housing. We know you are for open housing. We want to thank you for not cutting us off."
Well, he obviously, again, justice, which is ultimately fairness, it was very important to him. And as part of that, and it's part of American political history is both sides need to be heard. All sides need to be heard, and he believed in that.
But the quality of his leadership shone through where those two white men felt that it was worth coming up to talk to him.
Right.
They admired the type of leadership that he demonstrated. And so basically, even if you did not agree with the opinion, that they certainly agreed with the person.
Right. I would guess you would agree that he would have loved this museum because of the stories it tells and the culture. He talked about, I know there's a quote in the museum about the importance of cultural heritage.
Exactly. Not only culture and the preservation, but through the lens of social justice.
Right.
And so he'd be very proud.
He was also, I'm told, interested in historic preservation, not the preservation of the fabric of Seattle, particularly the things that related to the Chinese community, the Asian community in general. But Pike Place Market and the Central Waterfront, all very close to the Asian American heritage, and Pioneer Square. And so again, his legacy in the city is still pretty great.
Yes, he felt that the waterfront should be open to kids to fish without having to get a license.
Right.
And then Pike Place Market, he already had met with the artists, the architects, the people that wanted to save it. Well, we knew that the Mayor Braben, wanted to tear down the market, build a circular highway around the city, and then turn that into a massive parking garage.
Oh gosh.
And since he was on the council, it gathered with the artists and the architects. They held an art auction, and then he held a press conference where he proposed forming Friends of the Market to save.
So he was in on the ground floor of preserving Pike Place Market, which is
Yes.
one of the greatest public spaces in America, in my view, and I think a lot of
Absolutely.
people's. He died very, very young, age of 40 in a plane crash. Very, very sad. And particularly, think did he have higher ambitions? Would he have been mayor of Seattle? Gary Locke, of course, has said more than once that Wing Luke was his inspiration, becoming the first
Wing
Asian
easily
American
could have been
governor.
mayor. He easily could have been governor. He easily could have been back in D.C. because both senators that they knew of him and they recognized how effective he was, and they actually helped expand the search for the plane because they knew how effective he was.
Right. So, Betty, your own work in the community, you followed in your brother's footsteps in working in the community for change. Can you talk about that?
Oh, he was such a role model. I try to live what I teach. And so I've been involved in diversity training, multicultural education, multi-ethnic education for over 40 years. And I've had the opportunity to conduct diversity training in 36 different states across the nation.
Wow. So he has a pretty profound legacy, it seems to me, the helping to, beginning the remaking through historic preservation of the city, open housing, a basic cornerstone of civil rights, and for quite some time, this museum named after him. And as a family member, as his sister, what do you think his legacy is?
I think his legacy is to show that it's possible to reach, it's possible to make things better for others. In fact, very distinctly remember him saying, if you can make systemic change, then everybody gets a better chance.
Yes.
And so that is never ego, it's never aggrandizing himself. It was like, with this position, you can make bigger leaps and bigger changes and bigger, better things for people. So that legacy that you could reach, that you could, a piece of that too, is that you can reach across cultures.